Chapter 1, How Hillary Found Out. It was a day that most Americans will never forget. The President of the United States, faced with a scandal that threatened to destroy the highest office in the land, stated his case to the American people.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never.
Of course, in the end, that wasn't the whole truth. It would take months for the whole truth to emerge, and when it did, the president had to face not just the American people, but his own wife. The former First Lady turned senator turned presidential candidate recounted in her autobiography the moment that she finally learned the whole truth. This is her account in her own words.
Gulping for air, I started crying and yelling at him. What do you mean? What are you saying? Why did you lie to me? I was furious and getting more so by the second. He just stood there saying over and over again, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I was trying to protect you and Chelsea.
The portrait she paints is of a devastated wife and mother, a woman betrayed. But the accounts of how she was told and when she was told differ widely depending on who's telling the story. Journalist Sidney Blumenthal was brought into the White House to help manage the president's image. Now, he was one of the first family's closest advisors. But the portrait that he paints of Hillary's reaction to the news is quite different. Blumenthal wrote about the episode in his memoir called The Clinton Wars. I called Hillary. I said, whatever issues anyone had, and hers were worse than anyone's, we had to think about the politics. That was her reasoning as well. She said that the president would be embarrassed, but that was for him to deal with. Doesn't sound like the reaction of the same woman, does it? Now, the time came for the president to address the American people.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible.
Blumenthal also writes of Hillary's reaction that night. I talked repeatedly with Hillary and Jackie, and I stayed up until the middle of the night to watch Clinton give his speech. About 10 minutes after it ended, my hotel phone rang. It was the president asking me what my reaction was. I told him I thought it was all right. Hillary asked me what I thought. I told her the same. The president said he was pleased with it. Hillary also approved. That was the most important thing of all. They handed the phone to James Carville and Mark Penn, and I spoke to them too. And I could hear the president and Hillary bantering in the background. The impression she left with one of her closest advisors was significantly different. And while you would hope her husband would be the first to tell his wife of his adultery, there are accounts indicating that the night she describes in her book was not the first time that she had actually learned of the affair. According to Peter Baker of the Washington Post, the First Lady had been told the truth the day before, and not by her husband, but by the family's attorney. Quote, David Kendall, a fastidious yet tough-as-nails attorney from the blue-chip Washington law firm of Williams & Connolly, had represented both Clintons for 5 years now through every manner of alleged scandal, from Whitewater to Travelgate to Filegate, becoming one of their most trusted confidants. And so it fell on him at that critical moment to play emissary from husband to wife to disclose the most awful secret of any marriage. Something had obviously gone on between the president and Lewinsky, and Kendall had told the First Lady in his soft, understated way. The president was going to have to tell the grand jury about it. Only after Kendall laid the foundation did Clinton speak directly with his wife. Catherine Jean Lopez from the National Review was the first to bring to light these contradicting accounts, and as is so often the case with the Clintons, the truth probably lies somewhere in between. But as America considers another Clinton administration, it is important to revisit these questions. Was this an act of infidelity that threatened to crumble a marriage, or was it an act of betrayal that stood to ruin a political partnership that Americans were only beginning to reckon with? Only time will tell, and the story will continue.